Welcome back to Ember Productions. I'm Maxwell Haddad. I put the M in Ember. This is part 2 of my top 20 movies of 2022 celebration. If you have not watched part 1 yet, go check it out. I talk about my numbers 20 through 11 in alphabetical order. I also set a couple ground rules for what it is I'm doing here. I talk about my process. So do check that out, as this is very much a sequel to that video. But I'm also just going to talk about my top 10 films of 2022 here. These are going to be ranked. And so without any further ado, let's get a drum roll. All right, and we're going to dive right in. At number 10, we have a movie that is so warm and wonderful, and I happen to have him here with me. It's Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. This movie is so warm and whimsical and lovely and affirming. It's gorgeously animated and composed, a perfect mixture of animation and live action. It has more heart than this tiny little shell can take. It's filled with so many hilarious quips and observations, and I'm so in love with Marcel's worldview. It's so pure and precious. This movie is a salve for our broken times. It has so much joy and whimsy. It's bursting with life and love. The connections and the friendships we can make, the communities we build, the way social media outreach can be used for good. Jenny Slate's vocal work is astounding. Her and Dean Fleischer Camp, they wrote the movie, he directed it, she voices Marcel. They make absolute movie magic. At number 9, we have a very different kind of movie, a far more serious movie, and that is Tar. This movie is directed by Todd Field. Cate Blanchett is one of the best actors alive, and honestly, this might be her tour de force performance. It is exquisite and painful. This movie is so controlled and patient and gorgeously rendered and shot. It's psychologically fascinating. It has such a specificity of world. The intellectuals and the snobs and the music lovers and the composers and the way symphonies work and the cutthroat and the backstabbing. I think anyone who's ever worked in any sort of art-related field can at least to some extent understand what it is that's going on here. But there's more on this movie's mind. Over nearly 3 hours, you take a deep dive into the interior of Lydia Tarr. It's not a happy place. It's not a pleasant place. She's not a great person. She makes choices. She does some egregious things, and this movie explores all of that. It made me more anxious and scared at times than most horror movies. It uses silence and glances and music, both classical and new compositions. It's a stunning movie, and it's sort of unforgettable. I find myself, there's been a lot of Lydia Tarr memes throughout the internet, but I find myself thinking about this movie. And it's definitely one that is going to gestate and linger. And I find that there are so many things happening in real life that have allusions to Tar. And I think that just goes to show how thoughtful and well put together this movie is. At number 8, we have The Banshees of Inisherin. Now, I did not like Martin McDonagh's most recent movie, but in general, I enjoy his work, particularly in Bruges, Seven Psychopaths. I'm also a big fan of his work on the stage. He's a brilliant, brilliant playwright. This movie finds Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson and Martin McDonagh reteaming for the first time since In Bruges, and they make absolute magic together. This movie is hilariously, darkly funny, so theatrically composed. The dialogue crackles. The score and scenery are haunting. It has such a feeling of time and place, and it's enveloping. But here's the thing about this movie. This is one of the most uniquely potent and affecting movies about loneliness and depression and being stuck. Feeling stuck in a rut that I can think of, at least in recent history. It messed with me in a way I wasn't expecting. The first time I saw this movie, I almost left the theater angry. I almost was like, did I hate that movie? No, I loved it. It made me look at past experiences I've had, past friendships or relationships that have crumbled for the most arbitrary reasons. And in reflecting back on it, I think that's a testament to how sharply written this is and how beautifully performed this is. This is Colin Farrell's best work yet in cinema. Brendan Gleeson is great as well. But also Kerry Condon and Barry Keoghan are fantastic. This movie will sit with you, much like a lot of these movies on this list that I'm talking about today. They have so much going on under the texture and the surface that just, it gets in your skin, and that to me is a sign of great cinema. At number 7, we have Glass Onion. This is a sequel that isn't a sequel, but rather a new mystery with the return of Benoit Blanc from Knives Out. We have a new cast of characters, a new tone, new environments. I loved this movie. This is pure entertainment. It is a screamingly funny send-up of billionaires and influencers in the tech industry, and the way different people from different walks of life treated the pandemic. This movie has an incredible ensemble anchored by Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc, who finds even more delicious bon mots and turns of phrase and approaches to this character, and Janelle Monáe, who gets to do some really, really, really cool stuff in this movie. They are incredible. Kate Hudson is a riot. This movie has so many hilarious details. It's so cleverly crafted. The mystery unfolds. And much like my friend and film critic William Bibiani says, the best mystery movies are not so much a whodunit, but a whydunit, and that is definitely the case here. To me, this is pop cinema at its finest. It's intelligent and beautifully made. It's as entertaining and as joyous as movies get. In the realm of entertainment, to me, it does not get better than Glass Onion. I would take 100 more movies with Benoit Blanc if it means Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig keep teaming up and making these fabulously entertaining mysteries. At number 6, we have a movie that is probably the most divisive movie on this list. This is one that people either loved or hated. I did not see much middle ground, and that is Damien Chazelle's Babylon. Obviously, by virtue of the fact that I have it on this list, I loved this movie. This is an incredible movie about the rot of the movie industry and the enduring power of the movies. I think it argues that, like some of the most interesting and exciting and bizarre industries, you have to love it as much as you hate it, and you have to hate it as much as you love it. This is pure maximalist cinema. It is disgusting, it is messy, it is funny as hell, it is bizarre, energetic, gorgeous. I understand why it's divisive, but I loved every single second of it. This movie is very intentional in its handling of the race of the characters and assimilation, and where the various characters end up by the finale. It asks questions like, how does Hollywood, a seemingly magical yet chaotic place, treat people based on who they are and how well they assimilate? Hollywood can chew you up and spit you out unless you can escape, or if you change too much of yourself and then lose your actual identity. There's so much more going on under the surface of this movie than just the debauchery. But all of that feels intentional too. The parties in this movie are, as I said, just maximalism, extreme. There's disgusting stuff. Every sort of bodily fluid and drug are shown in this movie. But it's all intentional, and it is punctuated by an incredible group of performances by these actors, and Justin Hurwitz's magical, boisterous score. And let's talk about the ending for a second. The ending is probably the most divisive element of the film. I think the ending is brilliant. It argues that only with our identity intact can we rediscover the ideal image of what we supposedly love and hang on to hope. There's a montage that is used at the end of this film that, to me, signifies hope. It signifies how you cannot lose too much of yourself for the sake of art or business, and where our character finds himself at the end of this movie, and how that montage plays into it, and his reaction and what he's experienced. It's very poignant. It is not just self-congratulatory. I think everything in this movie is intentional and wonderful, and probably pound for pound the funniest movie of the year. Next, at number 5, we have After Sun by Charlotte Wells. This movie is cinema as poetry. It is lyrical, meditative. Its use of the medium of film is so assured and elegant, particularly considering this is Charlotte Wells' first feature film. It has a melancholy quality, and it sort of ends up being quietly devastating once you peel back the layers and really have time to consider what it is you've just seen and what may have happened. This is a movie about memories, both literally and in cinematic form, and the way it uses slightly different mediums, the way it uses a bookending structure, the way things are we flash back to or are inserted in. It is such an elegant use of cinema itself, and an argument about how the images we capture and our memories can be one and the same or not at all one and the same. It's also a movie about the relationships we have with our dads. Paul Mescal, who got a richly deserved Oscar nomination for this movie, and Frankie Corio, who plays his daughter, are so palpable and warm and believable as father and daughter. And again, the filmmaking craft by Charlotte Wells moved me so deeply. I have many thoughts and theories about what the ending means, certain aspects of the identity of these characters that are just influenced by the little details in this movie. The interior lives of these characters are so rich, and I feel like this is a movie that pays huge dividends on rewatches, and it breaks you apart every single time. At number 4, we have Everything Everywhere All at Once, one of the most beloved films of the year, a great word-of-mouth hit for A24 and the directors, the Daniels. This is an incredible martial arts action film, a hilarious and painful family drama, a sci-fi multiversal adventure. This movie has everything and then some. It deals with generational trauma, how the choices we make affect our present and our future, the expectations we can put on ourselves and on others. It has a lot to say about the immigrant experience. It's a hugely impressive, realized original work. The performances are fantastic. Ke Huy Quan and Michelle Yeoh and Stephanie Sue and Jamie Lee Curtis and on give transcendent performances. The visuals are phenomenal. I love the score. And this movie leaves you with so much catharsis and joy. Like a lot of the movies on this list, it sort of breaks you apart. But as opposed to certain other ones, this movie, by the end, I would argue, puts you back together. It is a miracle of cinema, a magical film. And I have already seen it so many times, and I just know this is a movie I'm going to watch over and over again. At number 3, we have Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I was lucky enough to see this in theaters. It premiered on Netflix. The level of artistry on display in this film is genuinely next level. The handcrafted details of each puppet and set, the expressiveness of the animation. I adore stop-motion animation, and pound for pound, this may be one of the most lovely and gorgeous examples of that form I've ever seen. So much of Guillermo del Toro's signature aesthetic is elegantly weaved into this classic story. It tells the story of Pinocchio. Maybe the best we've ever seen on film. It is a stunning, masterful work of animation and storytelling. This movie is a rallying cry against fascism and conformity. It has a religious element to it that I thought was handled so smartly. It's very clear that this movie is drawing inspiration from Catholicism. But I think it also makes some very cogent arguments about how religion and faith and organized religion are not necessarily the same thing. This movie is full of life and pain and whimsy. The songs and the score are so wonderful, and the vocal performances, especially by Ewan McGregor, who I think becomes the soul of the movie, are fabulous. It also has an absolutely fascinating depiction of death and the afterlife. This movie made me sob. And in terms of being an animated film that works as both a fun, magical adventure and one that deals with mortality and death and much deeper themes, it would make a terrific double feature with Puss in Boots: The Last Witch, which was in the previous video. Amazing film. Okay, we are coming down the end here, and at number 2 we have Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans. This is a gorgeous, empathetic, yet also kind of cynical, autobiographical movie. It is not necessarily the love letter to cinema that you may think it is, but I would argue it's a far more complicated and poignant film about breaking down the archetypes of the family and how that influenced Spielberg. And I think in that, it makes you rethink a lot of his work. There is very clearly an emphasis on daddy issues in the work of Steven Spielberg, and this movie can be very illuminating as to why. They're not called the Spielbergs, they're called the Fablemans. They don't have the same first names, but everyone involved in this project has been very clear about how this is heavily inspired by Spielberg's life. It is as gorgeously directed and as anything Spielberg has made in recent memory. The cinematography, the score, the performances. But what really sat with me is how this is a commentary on how sometimes being so attached to your art can ruin your relationships. And living your life through the lens and through the camera can sometimes just cause more pain as opposed to catharsis, but sometimes we don't know what else to do with that pain. It becomes a vicious cycle. We are looking through our art, we are looking through a camera, and we lose part of ourselves, and we lose some of the humanity, but it's all we know. We get lost in our art. On top of that, this movie is an amazing film of American Jewish representation. I did a long video review about this movie where I talked a lot about how I felt seen by many elements of this movie in a way I haven't in a lot of cinema, and in a time where anti-Semitism is at an all-time high in this country. This movie's very poignant and casual and on-point representation of Judaism and cultural Judaism is stunning. I absolutely love this movie. I've seen it a couple times, and this is another one that I know I'm going to treasure for many years to come. We come to the number one movie, my favorite movie of 2022, and that is Jordan Peele's Nope. This movie works both as a massively entertaining summer alien blockbuster with amazing action sequences and set pieces, a score by Michael Abels that I have listened to nonstop since it came out of this world cinematography. It is directed with such energy and verve. The performances are brilliant. Keke Palmer and Daniel Kaluuya and on and on. It's also intense and terrifying. It has these horror sequences that are unforgettable in their imagery and impact. But this movie is more than just that. It is a brilliant commentary on spectacle as it relates to audiences and cinema at large. It is also a thoughtful commentary on man's relationship with animals and predators. There is a subplot in this movie involving an old TV show and an animal on that TV show, and this incredible scene of tension and violence, and the way that sequence parallels the main element of the film with the aliens is beyond brilliant. The way that humans and predators bond and feed off each other and fear each other and inspire each other. On top of all that, this movie is a very, very smart discussion about how the movie industry has always overlooked the contributions of black people to the movie industry. The best cinema for me is the movies that tie together entertainment and thought. And in recent history, few movies have done that as masterfully as Nope. You can watch this and have the time of your life. It's like Jaws with aliens. It is a magnum opus of summer blockbuster cinema. It is also one of the most cogent and thoughtful deconstructions of movie making, of spectacle, of Hollywood, and how it mistreats certain people and takes advantage of them, and how they try to take it back. And even then, the movie kind of has the last laugh. Nope is a masterpiece, and I am so deeply in love with this movie. So there you have it, my top 10 movies of 2022. Let me know what you think in the comments. What were some of your favorite movies of the year? Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends. We have so much more exciting stuff coming to Ember Productions here in 2023. And we will see you next time. Bye!